Okay, so the first question, thinking about the past, why did you guys open your office in Medellín? I understand that you were considering other cities, right? So why Medellín?
Yeah, I think as many of you know, AI may be the most important and disruptive technology of our time, and it'll transform multiple industries, transform society. McKinsey estimated $13 trillion of value creation, GDP growth globally by the year 2030. And today, a lot of the work done by AI is led by a small handful of hubs like Silicon Valley and Beijing, and I think the world needs more AI hubs. So over a year and a half ago, we were looking around to try to decide where to set up our first international office. We actually spent about 6 months looking at a lot of different cities in Latin America, in Asia, and in Europe. And our team, including me, built a giant spreadsheet, screening criteria, visited multiple cities, called up the local teams, visited different universities in different countries in order to figure out where the talent is, what's a good educational system. And after about 6 months of investigation, we had a strong conviction that Colombia, and Medellín in particular, has the potential, is on a great trajectory to become a future AI hub. Just to let you know some things that really influence us, I think the strong educational system, we found great partners in the athlete, UTA, UNAI, the strong existing talent, strong software engineering ecosystem with many software engineers integrated to AI. I think the Colombian government has already made many smart moves to promote the growth of AI, and also the local business ecosystem. I think we found great partners here in Rutani and others. And what I would love to see in the future is if, and AI is still very young, right? I think that AI is still so young that every major city still has a good chance of becoming a future AI hub. And Medellín has all of the ingredients needed to accomplish that. And so we want to come here to hopefully participate in that and also help with the rise of AI here in Colombia and Medellín.
Does the bandeja paisa have anything to do with it?
My wife thinks that I wanted to come to Medellín partly because I think your paisa is delicious. I did have paisa for lunch today and for dinner last night, but that was not the number one reason.
Excellent. The other question about the past is kind of a technical question. Around the time that you went and worked for Google and for Baidu, that is to say 2011, 2014, there were certain breakthroughs. All of a sudden, certain AI technologies that used to be kind of decent became really, really good. For instance, one of them translating from voice to text, or also face recognition, right? All of a sudden, Facebook was telling you, oh, this is your friend Edwin. Do you want to tag him? And things like that, right? Is there any other AI technology as we speak that is, coming from that phase, from being good to being really excellent and easy to use?
I think back around 2011, or even a little bit before 2011, a lot of the rise of AI was driven by scale. We already had a lot of data, but computers, both CPU computing and especially GPU computing, were getting fast enough for us to finally train big enough neural networks to take advantage of the data we already had. So I saw a few different communities flip from using more traditional methods and using deep learning. I think speech recognition was actually one of the first to flip, thanks to the work of people like Dong Li and Jeff Hinton. Computer vision came a little bit later with ImageNet, and then I saw MLP flip after that, and then robotics. I think a lot of healthcare work is now converting as well. Even though the technologies improved dramatically, one of the things that our community still has a gap to fill is to take the great research results and to translate them into more practical deployment results. The gap between a research paper and a practical deployment is still quite large, and our community is still getting better at that. In terms of future technologies, it turns out that a lot of the rise of AI was driven by the large consumer internet companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Baidu, that have a lot of users and therefore have a lot of data. One of the things I'm excited about right now is the rise of small data. You've heard about the rise of big data. And if you have 1 million images with 100 million user records and training giant neural network, that works great. But once you start to look outside consumer internet, for example, if you have a manufacturing plant that is inspecting smartphones to see if they have scratches on them or not, fortunately, no factory has manufactured 1 million cell phones with scratches on them that need to be thrown away. And so factories just do not have millions of pictures. And if you're able to get neural networks to work even with small data, 10 pictures or 100 pictures or 1 million pictures, it dramatically opens up the set of applications. And so with the advances in things like few-shot learning, one-shot learning, data generation, meta-learning, I'm seeing exciting progress in small data. And actually the work that our team in Medellín is doing, a lot of these innovations are allowing us to enter industries that just do not have the giant data sets of consumer internet.
Exactly. Can we go a little bit in that direction? Of course, not everything can be disclosed, but could you tell us about some areas that the company in Medellín is working on, like broad areas?
Yeah, so let's see. One of the things I'm excited about is a lot of I feel like small data is the cutting edge of deep learning. It's not the only one, it's one of the cutting edge areas of deep learning. And a lot of the work that our team is doing, a lot of the work that Ng&AI is doing in small data is done by the team here in Medellín. So I think our team is doing cutting edge, deep learning work that I don't think is being done in America yet, for example. And I think other than that, the team in Medellín has, I think, over a dozen projects ranging from have an educational initiative, which is interesting to hear, that is taking software engineers providing machine learning training and then helping them get placements in other companies to do more AI work. Doing a range of projects from visual inspection that you heard mentioned. Actually, this afternoon I was reviewing with the team the neural networks they're building for PCB, printed circuit board manufacturing. Again, neural networks that are different than anything in any published papers. So I consider cutting edge work. Projects in healthcare, projects trying to optimize fuel savings, some projects in trying to improve job recommendations. So our team here in Medellín includes a large team from Ng&AI, which is helping companies jumpstart AI adoption. AI Funds, which is the $175 million startup studio that Helmut mentioned, which is building many different AI companies, including 4 portfolio companies with a presence in Medellín. And then also deeplearning.ai, which is our educational teaching, deep learning specialization, which as well as AI for everyone. And as part of a commitment to this region, deeplearning.ai has also created and is releasing Spanish translations of all of the videos so that the Spanish-speaking audience can also have easier access to these materials.
The Ministry of Technology in Colombia has a plan to form over 4,000 people in artificial intelligence, engineers that will be capable of doing machine learning and artificial intelligence. Do you think that plan makes sense? And if so, what do you think will be the impact of such a plan in Colombia if we accomplish to form over 4,000 of machine learning engineers?
I think training 4,000 people is a great start. And I would love to see it grow over a few years to 40,000, and then maybe 400,000 is a lot, but I would love to see it eventually end up significantly more than 4,000. Today Silicon Valley and Beijing are our tech hubs of AI. they weren't always this way. By the way, in 2014, when I went to China, when I joined Baidu to build AI in China, a lot of my American friends asked me, they said, hey Andrew, why are you trying to build AI in China? Like, how much AI is there in China? But at that time, in 2014, I saw a lot of the elements in China, and I had conviction. I was convinced that AI could rise quickly in China, and maybe, hopefully, I played a role in helping that out. One of the early encouraging signs I see today is that our office, in addition to attracting people from Colombia to come join us, under Alejandro Betancourt's leadership, actually, hopefully when we get to do wave Alejandro, the team has also attracted people to set job offers coming from Poland, from Egypt, from Bangladesh, and from Chile. So one of the things I'd love to see Medellín become is at least local, but maybe even global talent hub, where if someone in Poland says, I want to work in AI, where do I move? Well, they could move to Silicon Valley, maybe they could move to Beijing, or why not think of moving to Colombia? So I'm seeing early signs of that. Now, an ecosystem is much bigger than any one company. I feel like for us to be, it's impossible for us to be successful by ourselves, which is why a lot of what we want to do is contribute to the community. I'd love to have multiple successful AI teams and have a lot of people in the community learn about machine learning, deep learning, and be able to use these tools effectively. Also been grateful for the university partnerships with EFE, UTA, UNI to explore if we can offer more AI training. And I think for AI to be used successfully, I know many of you are engineers. If you learn about machine learning, deep learning, the field is still young enough. This is a great time to break in. But also business leaders. It turns out that for AI machine learning to be successful in the company, it's not sufficient to have a team of 10 brilliant engineers, and then for the rest of the company to know nothing about AI. And so I think providing education at all levels, which deeplearning.ai does with the technical courses and the non-technical courses, AI for everyone, but which I'm very encouraged that the Colombian government is doing as well, will help all of us be more successful. Let me tell you a secret. Let me tell you one thing I've not shared with a lot of people. One of the things I did at deeplearning.ai was create a course called AI for Everyone, which was intended for a non-technical audience, right? So, for a CEO or a vice president or a manager, a product manager that doesn't know how to code. One of the reasons I did that was because I felt if a CEO of a company or VP or management team takes AI for Everyone, they will be in a much better position to set the machine learning team up for success. So part of my secret plan was to get more, company executives to take AI for Everyone. Then this will make them want to hire even more machine learning engineers, and this will maybe even worsen the talent shortage we have in machine learning engineers worldwide.
Nice secrets. Okay. Last time you mentioned some of the top hot topics that were there 1 year ago that were hot topics in machine learning. One of them, for instance, you mentioned that already, was being able to train your neural networks with smaller data sets. You call it, I understand, small data. What other hot topics in machine learning or AI would you signal as the most significant one, the ones probably bringing the most important changes?
Yeah, mention a few things I'm excited about. Slightly less technical side, I'm excited about the rise of machine learning as a systematic engineering discipline. So, to make an analogy, I think thousands of years ago, if you wanted to build a bridge, there used to be these wise old men and wise old women that knew how to build bridges that stay up. You ask them to take a look at what you're building, they'll say, hey, add a piece of wood there, and if you add that piece of wood, for some reason the bridge stays up. But eventually we had to create the engineering discipline of civil engineering, and today people all around the world build reliable bridges. I think machine learning and deep learning is still in that earlier era where a student may train a neural network and for some reason it doesn't work. So they go ask, hey Helmut, what do I do? And Helmut that says, oh, change the activation function in the 5th layer from whatever, and then for some reason it magically works. One of the most encouraging things I've been seeing in deep learning is this evolution from this sort of tribal knowledge, intuition-based discipline to a systematic engineering discipline. And our teams, Ng and Helmuth Trefftz, I feel like we are one of the teams that are in the process of making up new processes all the time. So for example, one of the processes that so for example, in software engineering, you may have heard of Scrum and 2-week sprints. One of the very unusual things that some of my teams in machine learning do is run 1-day sprints, right? Because rather than executing for 2 weeks, then seeing where you are and changing directions. When I work on a machine learning project, sometimes we write code during the day, run an experiment overnight. The next morning, we do error analysis to decide what to do next. Then based on that, we decide what code to write the second day, and then we run the experiment the second day at night. And so this is one example of a very strange process. Sometimes this 1-day sprint, that's crazy, right? But in the machine learning world, for some projects, not all projects, but some projects, this allows us to drive much faster process. So this is one, and if you look at software engineering, it took us a long time to figure out that version control was a great idea. And in fact, it took us a long time to evolve, right, from, I guess, CVS subversion to Git, right? Maybe there'll be something else. It took us a long time to figure out that code review is a great idea. And I think in the machine learning world, we're still making up those processes, but these processes are making machine learning more systematic. Some example of that. Oh, real quick, I was at the ICML, International Conference of Machine Learning, a couple of months ago. In terms of techniques in machine learning I'm excited about, maybe I'll just mention two. Well, one is meta learning for reinforcement learning. Maybe I won't dive into that. But people like Peter Pugh, Chelsea Finn, OpenAI doing great work on that. I think a lot of hype about reinforcement learning works well simulated, hard to make it work in a real robot. But I'm seeing signs of traction in meta reinforcement learning. And then I'll mention one other weird thing I'm excited about, which is self-supervised learning. At ICML, I spent a whole day at the self-supervised learning workshop. And there's this idea that from unlabeled data, you can make up supervised learning tasks that allow you to learn very useful hidden representations you can transfer to new tasks. So for example, one of the tasks you can have is take a picture, cut it into a 3x3 grid. Here's a picture, cut it, so you have 9 pieces. I'm going to shuffle these 9 pieces randomly, and then ask the supervised learning algorithm to tell me what was the original mapping of these 9 pieces. So you can make up unlimited amounts of labeled data because you're just taking unlabeled images, cutting it up, and then shuffling the 9 pieces. So you can generate infinite amounts of labeled data. But with carefully designed artificial tasks that you create from labeled data, I'm seeing very encouraging signs. You can train a giant neural network, learn fantastic hidden representation, and transfer it to a new task. So self-supervised learning is an exciting vertical. Sorry, I know that was very technical, but these are, maybe in my life I've sometimes been right, not always. I've been right a couple times about what technologies will be important in the future. So this is one that I'm excited about.
Oh, fascinating. I hope you will be right again, one more time. Some of the next questions have to do with the careers of the people who are sitting here. So if you don't mind, I would like to know a little bit better about the audience. How many here, please raise your hands if you are students. Okay. And out of those who are undergraduate students? Quite a few. Graduate students? Okay. And who are professors, teachers, like ourselves? Okay, quite a good number. And the rest, I assume, are practitioners of professional software engineers or practitioners of any other field. The rest, yeah, okay, okay. So here comes the question: if a developer in Colombia wants to pursue a career in AI, machine learning, what should this developer do? What should she or he start learning, and what would your recommendation be?
The best time to join the field is often when it's still taking off. AI is still taking off. Huge shortage of people that can work in AI, so this is a great time still to be jumping into it. And one common misconception of building AI projects is it's all machine learning engineers, using Jupyter notebooks to train neural networks. That's actually not true. A good AI team, in order to build practical systems to ship products, often has a mix of both, let's call it machine learning engineers as well as software engineers or software developers, front-end, back-end, mobile. And it usually takes that type of skill working together in order to build a valuable AI product. In terms of software engineers, it turns out that, let me tell you what I saw in Silicon Valley, right? 10 years ago, one of the ways to win glory as a back-end engineer was just work on bigger data sets than everyone else, right? So, you can imagine in a bar in Silicon Valley, two engineers would get together and will say, I process a petabyte of data, and then you go, well, I process 10 petabytes of data, right? I think we're moving into an era where skill as a software engineer is not about who processes the most data, it's about other things. And with the rise of the AI era, a lot of the most complicated problems at the intersection of AI plus front-end or back-end or mobile or other things. And I'll give you one example. Let's say we build a lot of AI products, so we see all these problems. Let's say you work on building a machine learning system that takes as input an X-ray image and tries to diagnose if the patient has cancer, right? We're comprising that. Well, it turns out that the output of the machine learning algorithm is uncertain. Your learning algorithm may look at a chest X-ray and say, oh, there's something weird here, there's something weird there, but 20% chance there's cancer there, 80% chance something weird there. But how do you design a website? How do you build a website that can display this type of information, which previously computers did not have? So I think one of the most exciting work to be done on front-end engineering is on thinking through, reinventing how front-end software engineering should work in the AI era, where you can sometimes train a neural network right there in your web browser, and it uploads these crazy things that are very hard to display to the user. On the back end, the way we build machine learning data pipelines, we are building very complicated pipelines that I've not seen anywhere else before, right? We get data from a factory, it comes back, latency requirements, where you store the data, edge, fog computing, integrated connections, and we're facing very complicated problems driven by the existence of the new AI technology. So I feel like many people will have great careers just being a software engineer. I think it's a fine thing to do, but the new disruptive technology today is AI, and I think a software engineer, front-end, back-end, mobile, whatever, full stack, that figures out how your work needs to change in the AI era will be doing something very unique and very valuable and very intellectually exciting. You don't need to, let's see, machine learning is still immature enough that if you take some classes from Coursera or deeplearning.ai, you could learn enough to get a job as a entry machine learning engineer. But if you're an experienced back-end engineer, you don't want to be an entry-level machine learning engineer. What's much better for your career instead is to learn a little bit about AI and then work on the really hard and really important problems on how back-end engineering is changing in the AI era. And that's the class of problems that very few people are working on. And it gives you more of the opportunity to do very unique and very intellectually exciting and important work.
Very nice. There's your tip. Okay, these guys here are already working for the local company in Medellín, right? Raise your hands so people see. Oh, was that?
Yes, we are.
I know. That's where I'm going to. Who wants to work for their company, for his company in Medellín? Okay. So we hear that the selection process for your company is quite different from the traditional Colombian companies, because I was joking with Andrew. I was telling him that in the interviews here in Medellín, when you go to a company, they usually ask you, what's your mother's name? What's your father's name? What do you like for what kind of movies do you like, and things like that. Whereas in their interview process, for instance, they are asked them to go in front of a whiteboard and solve a problem and things like that. So what would be your recommendation, very practical recommendations for these people who want to apply to your company? How should they prepare?
Yeah, maybe I have two suggestions. If you're interested in working with us, don't sweat too much. What I recommend you not do is don't feel like you need to spend 6 months preparing before you get in touch. Get in touch with our team. We'll tell you what our interview process is, and we'll just tell you, we think you're great, or we'll just tell you, oh, why don't you do this first, and then we apply or something. We're actually really friendly, and we'd rather, so don't feel like you need to wait for months before you get in touch with our team. Just get in touch, we'll tell you what our interview process is and the work we do. So just get in touch soon. Our interview process is quite rigorous, I guess. We use fairly similar interview processes in the US and in Colombia, and when people come, we'll always ask technical questions. Can you solve these technical problems in machine learning or in software engineering or whatever? We usually ask you to do some coding, so we can learn if you could, write code to make things work. And then we'll often also ask you about projects you've done in the past. We'll often say, tell us about a project you've worked in the past that you're proud of, so we can better understand what you've worked on before and how well that experience and mindset will translate to the types of projects we work on here. But my advice is, I don't know, I feel like we do have a rigorous interview process, but don't worry too much about it. Just get in touch if you think you might be interested.
The question is, as a father, you cannot help but think about the world that you're leaving for your children, right? And the world that your children will be living in, right? So what kind of world do you envision for Nova with the support of AI?
I think with every technological breakthrough, we are given a chance to remake the world. And I think the world is not that bad today, but it could also be so much better. With AI capabilities, I would love for us to go and transform not just the software industry, but every industry, and make human activity much more efficient and much more valuable. And I think we are, and free up a lot of humanity from repetitive tasks. And I think one mistake that our community made the last time around was with the last technological disruption, the rise of the internet. I think we created tremendous wealth, but we also contributed to wealth inequality. So this time around, with the rise of AI, I would like to put all the pieces in place, ranging from better educational systems. And yes, AI will automate jobs or parts of jobs, but it's our responsibility to make sure people have training, education, and are well taken care of, and have a chance at a meaningful career. But what I would most like is, we will use AI to create tremendous wealth. That's already really clear. But what I would really like to do is to make sure this time around that we make sure that wealth is fairly shared and that we take everyone along with us.
Beautiful. Before we go on to the questions, I think it's fair to say that Andrew and his friends at Stanford already changed the world by creating Coursera, right? It has really changed the way education is delivered. High quality education is delivered to everybody in the world. Let's hope that you're right again, and you will lead to, with your leadership, we create a better world. So thank you very much.
Yeah, the rise of deep learning starting maybe about almost 10 years ago, was driven by the rise of scale, right? Scale of data and scale of computation. But if you look at what the sophisticated AI teams do today, it's not that we use deep learning for everything. I think of AI as a portfolio of many different tools. And so, sometimes, actually we use deep learning a lot, but sometimes, a few months ago, I was sitting down with the team debugging implementation of PCA, right? Looking at residuals of PCA. And I think the experienced AI teams will have a portfolio of tools ranging from machine learning and deep learning to maybe a knowledge graph, to probabilistic graphic models, to planning algorithms, and depending on the problem we're facing, we'll draw from different elements of this portfolio in order to solve the problem at hand. I think so much hype about deep learning because of all of these portfolio of tools. Deep learning is the one whose performance is now so much greater than, say, 5 years ago. Whereas in contrast, I don't know that Bayesian networks work that much better. I'm sure if you go to UAI or Uncertain AI conference, Bayes nets work a bit better now compared to 5 years ago, but it's not that 100x improvement or something that we saw in deep learning. I think there is excessive hype about AI, especially about AGI. I think artificial general intelligence, hopes or fears or something, did cause some amount of irrational exuberance and irrational investments. But if you look across the field of AI, yes, the media reports had estimates of how much money, right, Google had spent just on AlphaGo or on DeepMind. But if you look at the net impact on a company like Google, deep learning has been incredibly profitable for the company as a whole. So I think, let's see, one of the reasons I don't think that we're in a very bad bubble is because I have seen with my own eyes, the value or the money that some large companies are making with AI, and that revenue is significantly greater than its investments, even though the investments are also very significant. So the ROI of these investments is then very positive. And as a community, one thing I believe in is there are some approaches to AI that I find more promising. I told you some of them, right? A lot of our work is supervised learning, do small data, except for self-supervised learning, except for unsupervised learning. There's some things I'm excited about. There's some approaches that I'm personally not as excited about in the short term. So for example, I am making no investments in quantum AI. We're doing almost nothing in deep reinforcement learning. I think it's a great research topic, but I think it'll be a while before it's that useful. Having said that, I will 100% cheer on someone else doing deep RL or quantum AI or almost anything else within reason. I would not cheer on hype, but I think we as a community, we are big enough for us to explore many different approaches, and a small number of successes has paid out really, really well. I think we as a community, we will explore some things that will turn out to be dead ends. But our community is now so big that we can afford a 50-person team doing some piece of work that turns out to be wrong direction, because chances are there'll be a different 50-person team, maybe a different company, that does something really amazing. So I think I will tend to cheer on everyone trying to push forward all of the different areas of AI, even if I think some areas are more promising and I will invest more in those myself. But I'm glad that there are others investing in other areas as well, because that's what we need as a community. I think Colombia government has already made many smart moves, and I hope that continues. I think that investment in education is a big deal, and I think government has very strong convening power. So organizations like Root to N are very effective. I think I'll actually be back in Colombia next month to speak at Colombia 4.0. But so events like that, the power of the government to convene events, put together technology and businesses is also very powerful. At Landing AI and AI Funds, our teams are working on products that serve a global audience, and so the team is writing software that will be used in the United States or used in Asia or used in other countries or used in Latin America as well. But one thing, in addition to having some teams like ours that serve the global market, it turns out that every country, well, Colombia, will have a lot of application scenarios that are very unique to Colombia. So the way that, Colombia does coffee agriculture, actually I should drink a lot of Colombian coffee as well, or the way that Colombia thinks about mining or oil and gas. There are actually a lot of problems that Colombia is in a better position to solve than some teams sitting off in Silicon Valley. And so I think thoughtful investments in promoting AI for the industries and the verticals that Colombia is already good at. I don't think Colombia should build another web search engine. That was like the competition for 10 years ago. We're already very good web search engines, it's just one of the existing ones. But we don't have very good solutions yet for AI for mining or AI for agriculture, AI for cement manufacturing. But a lot of the Colombian problems will be better solved in Colombia than Silicon Valley, and I think those are vertical areas that I hope the government can focus on, can make sure to invest in.
I think it's time now to wrap up and we'll move to the next sections.
Can I just say one more thing?
Please go ahead.
I have a request to all of you. Over the last couple of days, Alejandro and I traveled to Bogota, went around Medellín, speaking to a lot of people. I think because our team has been operating here for a year, and I know how good their work is, and because even before we started, we spent 6 months, right, trying to figure out where to go. I find it maybe a little bit strange that I, as an American executive, I have a lot of faith in Medellín. And what I want to tell you is, I need you to also have faith in Medellín. Because if what we're here to do is to not just make, our companies, AI and Frontier successful, but if what we want to do is build a community, be a regional or global talent hub, have first 4,000, and then maybe in the future 40,000 or even more people trained on AI. And if you want your city to, in the future, be one of the global AI hubs, so that the next time someone in Poland is looking for a job, it's great if they come and join Landing AI. I think it's also great if they come to Medellín to join a different company. So what I want to do with all of you is work together to build this community, build this ecosystem. And for that to happen, I have faith in Medellín, and I need you to also have faith in Medellín and to work together with us as a community to tell everyone we are going to make this a powerful AI.
Wonderful.